Imagine an empire teetering on the brink of collapse, is squeezed by powerful European nations and torn apart by internal strife. This was the world Sultan Abdul Hamid II inherited in 1876. He was the 33rd Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, and his reign would become one of the most fascinating and controversial chapters in its long history. How did one man hold together a crumbling empire for over 3 decades? What were the secrets behind his long and complex rule? Today we're diving deep into the story of the last great Sultan, a ruler who was both a modernizer and an autocrat, a diplomat and a spy master. When Abdul Hamid II ascended the throne, the Ottoman Empire was in dire straits. It was drowning in debt, its political system was in chaos, and European powers were circling like vultures, ready to carve up its territories. His own brother, Murad V, had been deposed after just a few months due to mental instability. The pressure was immense. In a surprising move, Abdul Hamid began his reign by championing reform. He promulgated the first ever Ottoman constitution in 1876, ushering in an era of constitutional monarchy and establishing a parliament. It seemed like a new liberal dawn for the empire. But this dawn was short-lived. The empire was soon embroiled in a disastrous war with Russia. Citing the immense pressures of the war and the political infighting that paralyzed the government, Abdul Hamid made a fateful decision. In 1878, just 2 years after it was created, he suspended the parliament and the constitution. He took all power into his own hands, transforming the government from a fledgling constitutional monarchy into an absolute autocracy. For the next 30 years, Abdul Hamid would rule with an iron fist, convinced that only his personal, centralized control could save the state from destruction. This marked the beginning of a long period of autocratic rule that would define his legacy. Now, with absolute power secured, Abdul Hamid embarked on a massive project of modernization, but on his own terms. He wasn't interested in Western-style liberal democracy. Instead, he focused on practical advancements that would strengthen the state and his control over it. One of his most ambitious projects was the expansion of the railway network. You've probably heard of the famous Orient Express, which connected Paris to Istanbul, but Abdul Hamid's vision went even further. He initiated the construction of the Hejaz Railway, a monumental undertaking designed to connect the capital, Istanbul, with the holy cities of Medina and Mecca. This wasn't just about modern transport. It was a powerful political statement. The railway would make the Hajj pilgrimage easier for Muslims across the empire and beyond, reinforcing his role as the Caliph, the leader of the global Muslim community. It was also a strategic military tool, allowing him to move troops and supplies quickly to the restive Arabian Peninsula. His focus on infrastructure didn't stop with trains. He oversaw the development of modern telegraph networks, which became the nervous system of his centralized state. These lines connected the far-flung provinces of the empire directly to his palace in Istanbul, allowing him to receive information and issue orders with unprecedented speed. This technological network was crucial for his style of governance, which relied on constant information and swift action. He was, in many ways, a micromanager, deeply involved in the day-to-day affairs of the state, and technology was his greatest ally. Education was another cornerstone of his modernization program. Abdul Hamid understood that a modern state needed educated officials, doctors, engineers, and officers. Under his reign, a vast network of professional schools was established, teaching modern sciences, medicine, law, and military strategy. Thousands of students graduated from these institutions, forming a new, educated elite. However, this came with a paradox. While he promoted modern education, he was also deeply suspicious of the liberal ideas that often came with it. To counterbalance Western influence, he also poured resources into traditional Islamic education, ensuring that the new generation of Ottomans was both modern in skill and traditional in values. But how did he maintain such tight control over this vast and diverse empire? The answer lies in his formidable intelligence network. Abdul Hamid was known for being deeply suspicious, perhaps even paranoid, and he built a sprawling web of spies and informants that reached into every corner of society. This network, known as the Yıldız intelligence agency, reported directly to him at his palace. No official was too high, no dissident group too small to escape his surveillance. This created an atmosphere of fear and caution, effectively stifling political opposition for decades. Alongside surveillance came strict censorship. Newspapers, books and plays were all heavily censored to prevent the spread of subversive ideas like nationalism and liberalism. Even certain words were banned from print. For his critics, this made him a tyrant, the Red Sultan, who suppressed freedom and ruled through fear. For his supporters, he was a shrewd protector of the state, using necessary means to prevent its disintegration. On the world stage, Abdul Hamid proved to be a master of diplomacy. He played a delicate balancing act, which historians call pan-Islamism. He knew the Ottoman Empire couldn't defeat the great European powers militarily. So instead of confronting them head-on, he skillfully played them off against each other. He would court Germany to offset British and French influence, then use Russian ambitions to keep the others in check. His goal was always the same: to preserve the sovereignty and territorial integrity of his empire. At the same time, he promoted his role as the Caliph to Muslims living under colonial rule in British India, French North Africa, and the Russian Caucasus. By positioning himself as the leader of a global Islamic community, he created a powerful diplomatic tool. He could hint that any aggression against the Ottoman Empire might provoke unrest among the millions of Muslims living within his rivals' empires. It was a brilliant, if risky, strategy that helped him navigate the treacherous waters of 19th century geopolitics. Despite his diplomatic skills, his reign saw significant territorial losses. The empire lost control over Cyprus, Tunisia, and Egypt to European powers, and several Balkan states gained their independence. Yet, considering the immense pressures, what's truly remarkable is not what he lost, but what he managed to hold on to. For over 30 years, he kept the core of the Ottoman Empire intact, staving off what many saw as its inevitable collapse. He delayed the end, giving the empire a few more decades of life. However, the forces of change he had tried so hard to control eventually caught up with him. The modern, educated class he had created in his own schools became the source of his downfall. A secret revolutionary group, the Committee of Union and Progress, better known as the Young Turks, emerged from the ranks of the military officers and intellectuals he had trained. They were nationalists who believed that the Sultan's autocratic rule was holding the empire back. They demanded the restoration of the 1876 constitution. In 1908, the Young Turk Revolution erupted. Facing a widespread army mutiny, Abdul Hamid had no choice but to yield. He restored the constitution and reconvened the parliament. His absolute power was gone, but the story doesn't end there. A year later, in 1909, a counter-coup by conservative elements loyal to the Sultan attempted to overthrow the new government. The Young Turks swiftly crushed the rebellion and accused Abdul Hamid of orchestrating it. This was the final straw. The parliament voted to depose him. Abdul Hamid II, the man who had ruled the Ottoman Empire for 33 years, was sent into exile in Thessaloniki. He spent his final years under house arrest, watching from afar as the empire he had fought so hard to preserve crumbled under the leadership of the Young Turks, culminating in its disastrous entry into World War I. He died in 1918, just months before the empire's final collapse. So how should we remember Abdul Hamid Zakwo? Basas Konakat. Was he a bloody-handed tyrant who suppressed liberty, or a wise statesman who single-handedly postponed the fall of an empire? The truth, as always, is complex. He was a product of his time, a ruler who used authoritarian methods to pursue modernization. His policies built schools and railways that shaped the future of the region, but they also created a climate of fear and suppressed a generation of political thought. His legacy is still debated fiercely today in Turkey and across the world. He was the last sultan with real power, a complex and contradictory figure who presided over the dramatic final act of the Ottoman Empire. His reign is a powerful lesson in the delicate balance between tradition and modernity, control, and freedom. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think about Sultan Abdul Hamid II? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next video. See you next time.